calling all educators with a passion for teaching and a health for faith. Get ready for a transformative journey with the Educators with Oil podcast, where host Ronnette Branham is dedicated to helping teachers become better through biblical strategies.
Welcome to Educators with Oil podcast. I am your hostess, Ronnette Branham, and this podcast exists to help educators think clearly about who they are, how they lead, and how they sustain themselves in increasingly complex educational systems. Today, I want to begin this season by naming something we often misdiagnose, and that we misdiagnose in education, and that is burnout. Burnout is usually blamed on workload, behavior, curriculum changes, lack of support. These things are real stressors, but they are not the root problem. Burnout, more often than we admit, is an identity problem. Over time, educators don't lose skill, they lose connection to their identity. Let me see how to work. Okay, I'm sorry. It's often an identity problem. So many educators are doing everything they are trained to do: planning, differentiation, accommodating, adjusting, and still feel depleted. That depletion doesn't come from effort alone. No, it doesn't. We feel like we are feeling depleted because we're working so hard. We're doing all this extra work and we're so tired. It doesn't come just from that. That depletion, it comes from teaching without clarity about who you are in that system. Teachers enter education with calling and purpose. We come in there, I'm called to do this. That's what we say when we get into our here it goes. With calling and purpose, I'm sorry. Systems reward performance, compliance, and overextension. That is something that happens. We know that. We do know that. Sorry about that. When identity becomes reactive, so over time, identity shifts from called educator, we're called to do this, to constant responder, because we're rewarded for performance. We're getting observed. The administration comes in and we're being observed, and we get a pat on the back. We get 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever it is, for following, performing in front of our administration, because that, we're performing. And then sometimes for compliance, they send an email out. The administration sends an email out and says, you got 2 weeks to turn in this, or a month. By February 1st, you have to have this into us, and you fix yours to get it done the first week. And you're getting a big shout out. You're getting a shout out because you complied. You did what you're supposed to do right away. You even get shout outs for things that are voluntary. You're overextending yourself, and you get a shout out for that. You're working on a program. You're doing some after school work. You're doing all this stuff, and you get a shout out for that. And you're overextending yourself, and that is sometimes what we think is the reason for our burnout, but it's not. It's not. It makes not being in tune or aligned with our calling, with our assignment, with our identity. It does make things feel heavier. So once you decide, okay, I'm going to overextend myself or comply right away, or perform for this administration, it feels heavy. Things that we love to do might feel heavy now. Identity drifts happen quietly. We're drifting. I was reading a book, I forgot. It's called we were reading a book a couple years ago, and it's called outwitting the devil, and he's talking about drifting, how we begin to drift, and that is something that happens. Well, it happens, but it happens quietly. So you stop asking, "Who am I, and why am I here?" And then after a while, you start asking, "What's required of me next?" We always be walking. I'm this educator. I'm called to do this. This is my gift. I'm a great teacher, and I'm going to do what it is I'm here to do. Right? I'm called to do this. Then after a while, when you start complying and performing and overextending yourself, what is it that I have to do next? That's what's happening, right? That's what we're saying. What do I have to do next? So guilt over boundaries. I remember having a meeting. These administrators came down and they stopped by my classroom. It was my lunchtime, and I had to make some phone calls. And it was like implied that I was being rude because I had to make phone calls. And one of them actually looked at their watch, saying like, "Oh well, like how long you gonna be here?" That has nothing to do with me. They knew that, but that over going over and through past boundaries, you start feeling guilty. I get down a little while after, and there's a whole meeting going on during lunch, and I wasn't feeling it, but then you feel guilty because you're letting people violate your boundaries without you saying anything. You're like, okay, nobody else is saying anything, so let me just follow along. No, that is one thing, right? Personalizing student behavior. You have these behaviors in our classroom, and then we start adjusting for that student. We start adjusting for those students. The student is acting out, he's going to flip out, she's going to flip out, so you're going to start walking on eggshells and giving them something different to do that has nothing to do with work. Okay, you go over there and color, right? That type of stuff. Start drifting. You start drifting with those type of things. You're out of alignment. Fear of speaking up. Like I said about with the boundaries, you feel guilty, and then you're afraid to speak up because you look like that one that is causing problems or acting out or something, whatever it is. You look like that one. You don't want to be the one who's always saying something and always speaking up, right? Feeling spiritually disconnected at work. These are just things that are where you find from drifting. These are not character flaws. These are signals of misalignment. That's what it is. It's signals that you're misaligned. These are not failures of professionalism because you speak up, because you don't speak up, right? Because you feel guilty. This is not your failure that I'm not as professional as I should be. This is not that, right? This is not that. One second. There are signals that voice and wisdom have been suppressed within the system. That's exactly what it is. Your voice and your wisdom. Because what you know to do, you're not doing, then you're just drifting. You're not even in line where you should be. So what I've learned is that when educators lose connection to their calling, to their clarity, and their confidence, the systems start to feel heavier than they actually are. I remember I'm going through things like that, and I know for a fact things start feeling heavy when you are not in alignment, when you're not in alignment with your identity. Who am I in this system? I am an educator called to do this job, and that's first and foremost. It's not first. I am creating something, creating as we would say, a differentiation. It's not differentiation. Creating a personal assignment for this student because they might act out. No, that's not who I am first. I will adjust to some things, but the more you start adjusting, the more you start drifting, you're going to feel heavier. And that is something that is true. I found it time and time again. When I really forget who I am, who I'm called to be, forget that I am this educator and I'm to educate my students. That's what my job is, and I'm called to do that. That I start trying to perform, trying to see what they want me to do. Then I start getting headaches. I lose focus, right? That you can take that to the bank. So this is why my work centers on a framework I call Identity before instruction. That you're going to hear me say that over and over again. Identity before instruction. Understand who you are before you even step into that classroom. Understand who you are before you open up a plan book, before you open up that curriculum. Who am I in this system? We have this curriculum, yes, but who am I? I'm the one who's going to execute it. And I just have to understand that I am called. This is my job, my profession, my calling. It's not just a job. Of course, we go over that all the time. Because before strategies, before initiatives, before outcomes, educators need alignment. Have to be walking in alignment with your calling, who you are. That you have to absolutely. The framework is grounded in 4 pillars, not tasks to manage, but truths to return to. So this is how this lays out. Identity, who you are before the role or the system. Who am I before I step into that building, into that system, into this environment, right? Into this program, whatever it is. Before I become this second grade teacher, who am I? Because I have to be somebody before all of that. My calling, why am I here beyond the job title? Why am I here in this school? I have an assignment. And the assignment is more than this second grade teacher, right? My voice, how I show up, how you show up, speak and lead without shrinking. Remember that. This is your calling. You can't shrink. You can't hide behind something. Oh, I got to do this. I got to say it this way because this is what they want. No, you have to have a voice. You have to use your voice. This works this way. This works for me. This works for my classroom. I'm going to follow the curriculum. I'm going to follow it to the letter, but I'm here too. I am here and I am the one to execute it. It's going to roll off of me. And that is something you have to remember. You cannot shrink. You could go to your administration, if you are the administrator, you go to whoever, your employees, your teachers, and say, this is what works. This is what I have found works, right? Keep your voice. Don't hide. Okay, nobody else is saying anything. It must be working. Maybe I'm the one. No, you have to use your voice because people are waiting for you to speak up. Believe that or not. People are waiting for you to use your voice. People are saying, it didn't look like that program was going to work, but she is one who would have spoken up 5 years ago. Now she's just going along with it. So it looks like it's working. Maybe this is working. No, they're waiting for feedback from you, right? That's why they give these surveys and things like that. And we don't want to answer the surveys truthfully because we know they know who we are when we sign in, because you have to sign in, right? So we're not truthful in our feedback, but you have to. They're expecting you to speak up. And then using wisdom, how you discern what you carry, what to release, and how to sustain yourself. Because you have to have wisdom in this culture, in this environment, in this education system as it is right now. You must have wisdom because you have to know what is it that I am supposed to carry. I know I was talking about to somebody about people and their personalities. Whatever you think or do, that's none of my business, right? So whatever you think of me or her or him or whoever, that's none of my business. I'm not going to carry that load. I almost did. Like I almost took that on every time I see. I'm just like, oh Lord, no, that's your business, right? Don't carry everything that somebody throws at you, tries to give you to lift. Don't do it, right? Have wisdom. Discern what it is that you're supposed to release. What am I supposed to carry? I know I have to teach this curriculum. I'm going to carry that. And I'm not going to stress about it. I'm going to carry that. I'm going to read through it. I'm going to study it, learn it, make sure I understand it so I can give it to my students. And that's it. But I'm not going to carry because you have a problem because I didn't teach it like the teacher down the hallway, because I don't speak as a teacher down the hallway. I'm not going to take that on. That's your business. That's your interpretation, right? I'm not going to do it. And how do I sustain myself through this? I said before, I have this great neurologist and he is awesome. He taught me how to sustain. He taught me this right here, that identity. What do I do? Who am I before I even go into the classroom? That is awesome. So when your identity is anchored, decisions no longer drain you. They do not. They do not drain you. Thank you very much. So this is actually my framework. This is what I've come up with. And a lot of times we carry things as a burden, and it's most of the time, probably every time, it is we have stepped out of alignment. We forgot who we are, and we're taking on a lot. And so it's just, we're going to unfold this in the next few weeks. I have 90 days to unfold a 90-day authority plan to unfold all of this. So that is where we are right now with that. And this is what it looks like when identity, calling, voice, and wisdom are either present or missing. No, when identity is unclear, every email feels urgent. Every email feels urgent. When identity is anchored, you respond without panic. When identity is unclear, boundaries feel unspiritual. When identity is anchored, boundaries feel responsible. Go back to that boundaries. If you're unclear and if your identity is unclear, you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be honoring these boundaries. Okay, they want to talk. Let's talk right now. No, it's not. Boundaries feel responsible. So this is my lunchtime. This is when I have to take my break and decompress, right? This is my time. And it's a spiritual time. It's a responsible thing to do, is to not take on everything and everybody when they want. Have boundaries. That's why we have caller ID now, because we do have boundaries. We don't have to answer every phone call, but that's just what it is. When identity is unclear, faith feels risky at work. So when your identity is unclear, you feel like, oh, should I have said that? I'm talking about me and my personal life. Like if I said, thank God, just something as simple as that, I feel like, oh, should I have said that at work? You can, because you know who you are. So when identity is anchored, faith becomes discernment. So now you're discerning and not performing for somebody. Oh, I shouldn't say this. I could say that. Maybe I should. No, it's discernment. Okay, maybe I cannot speak this way in front of these people, right? But I'm going to speak with my authority, and then you'll see the difference. So emails flows to clarity. Boundaries goes to confidence, right? Produces confidence. Faith produces clarity. Discernment produces consistency. Because if you're discerning, you're consistent. Every single time, this is how I'm going to behave, right? And so, I don't know, that was that. So over the next few episodes, I can go back. I sure hope I say the same thing when I'm on myself. I can use examples, I could do anything, but when I'm on by myself, it feels like I'm going too fast. But this is it. I just present it and just keep it moving. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. So over the next few episodes, we'll explore what it looks like to teach from identity, stay rooted in calling, use your voice with discernment, and practice wisdom in systems that often demand more than they give. Let's leave it like that. For now, here's the question. Here's the question to sit with. What have I been carrying that no longer belongs to me? That no longer belongs to who I am. We're carrying a lot of things. And I'm not saying not overextend. I'm not saying offering your services is overextension, because it's not, because the school functions based on the educators and the people in the building, right? We want our school to be fantastic, a fantastic place to come to. So we have programs. We have holiday programs. We have after school programs. We have all kind of things happening in the school. But that doesn't mean you have to take on every single role, right? So just know that you have boundaries. Every time somebody wants to sit and talk, not every time somebody wants to sit and talk, you need to sit and talk, right? Somebody calls you and says, on your lunch, could you run down here? You don't have to. You can if you want to, but don't let yourself drift into now every single time somebody calls, what do I do next? What do I do next? So this is where we are. So somebody says burnout for them has less to do with forgetting my identity and more to do with being constantly positioned in misaligned conditions, out of alignment. Same thing. We're saying the same thing. Um, uh, we're saying the same thing, actually, and it's that alignment, right, in those conditions. So you will, I, I understand that if you are every day tapping into who you are, you won't be walking in, drifting way over here, walking in a position that's not yours. You're not carrying things that's not yours. So you won't be misaligned. If you're misaligned, it's like we forget. The Bible talks about looking in the mirror, turning away, and forgetting who we are immediately. Same thing. I know when I walk into a classroom, when I walk into my school, I could have prayed all the way to school. And sometimes I get to school and I forgot that who I am. I forgot that God is with me. And then I'm getting to school and I'm stressed, like, oh my God, I have this to do, I have that to do. Here comes another email. I forget. But if I keep God first in who I am, who He called me to be, then when I walk in that classroom, I remember, okay, so let me sit. The first thing I will do is open my emails. Let's see, is there any priorities that I need to do? I'm not running around, okay, how's this child this morning? Oh my goodness. So I'm going to have to put him over here because he's going to be so stressed out, that I'm out of alignment because I'm not walking in who I am first. You have to walk in and keep that who I am first, and then everything else will flow. But I have to remember that God is with me all the time. And how you do it, I gave an example about the snapping the rubber band, but you think you have scriptures all around, or Bible quotes, or whatever you call it, and every now and then you take a breath right in the moment when it feels like something is stressful, because it probably is. These are stressors. We have a lot of stressors, but we still have to step back and say, oh, this is who I am. And so I understand it might not appear this way for certain things, and this goes beyond education. This goes well beyond education. It could go in any direction. If you look at a married couple, you look at a family unit, there's things that are happening because people are not remembering who they are. You get stressed because of somebody else is doing something, but you have no power over that person. You have no power over, we even give our children autonomy in different things. So yes, and He does command rest, and that's one thing. We keep overextending ourselves without resting. I do know, I listen to you're absolutely right. Sabbath was not a suggestion. It was protection. That's what I follow ET, and that's what he's doing for this month of December, talking about rest. And God gave us the framework for it. And a lot of times we're stressed out and overextended and performing because we are not in alignment with what God says for us to do. And we could go on, and this is true. I thank you for commenting, because you're absolutely right. We do need to take time to rest. At the same time, following this framework is we have to remember who we are. We can't be like the person who is who looks in the mirror and forgets who they are. And we can do that anytime when we snapping at people. Anything that is out of the character of Christ, being Christ-like, is because a lot of times we forget. We let those stressors take over, as opposed to walking in our identity with Christ. So I'm going to leave that. You're absolutely right. Self-sacrifice is spiritualized, and burnout isn't you don't think it's a failure of identity. It's a signal that something holy is being violated. Absolutely. I believe we are absolutely saying the same thing. Absolutely saying the same thing. And it is, something is being violated. We forgot who we were in Christ, who God called us to be. We're stepping out of our identity. And that is so for now, again, I love this conversation, man. I wish I could call you in and we can have this conversation live. For now, the question is, what have I been carrying that no longer belongs to me? Sometimes, okay, it's not identity driven. Sometimes it's obedience to God, being confused with overextension to people. Okay, I believe again that we are saying the same thing. That is obedience to disobedience, or being not obedient to God means I forgot who I am. How could I forget God is in control? He is my Lord. He tells me what to do. I forgot that, because if I'm being disobedient, right? If I'm being not being obedient to what God tells me, that means I have to absolutely have forgotten who I am, who He is to me. Because how am I walking in trying to overextend myself to people when God said do this? God said no, you have to take time to rest. God says you get up early or you stay up late or do it however you do it when you set aside this time for Him. And then we're on our phone picking up our phone because somebody's calling us during that time when we're supposed to be with Him. That means I forgot who I am, right? This is identity before instruction, identity before your work, identity before performance. So we're going to leave it right here, and we're going to come back next week, and we're going to dig in some more. And I am so excited. I'm so excited because this sounds like Bible study to me, because we can go back and talk about who God. That's like remind me of when Jesus turned over the tables. And He turned over the tables because people understood they're supposed to sacrifice, but because they weren't able to bring their lambs and sheep and goats or whatever they had to bring, right, with them. So they said, okay, I'll get to the house of God and I'll exchange. I'll buy a sheep. That's not your first, that's not your first fruit, but I'm going to buy one and sacrifice it. That type of stuff. So we say, oh, I did what He said. He told me to sacrifice, but I forgot who I was. I forgot what He told me to do. I didn't follow what He told me to do. So if I am following after Him, I'm going to do what He said to do, not try to, say, okay, let me do what the other people are doing. They said it's working out. So I can be reached. Thank you. I can be reached at Educators with Oil Podcast. No. Educators with Ronnette. Let me see. My email address is educatorswithoil@gmail.com. Right. I'm on Facebook, Ronnette Branham, Educators with Oil. But my email is educatorswithoil@gmail.com. I have all of this. I should have. Let me see. I'm on Facebook. Right there. Did I put it there? That's my information right there on the bottom, scrolling down. So that's how I can be reached. Thank you. So again, if you enjoyed this conversation, I'll be here next week. And then I think after next week, I think I have a guest, but I have 90 days, a 90-day authority plan laid out for this. Thank you. And I will talk to you soon. I appreciate you. So this is identity before instruction. You could break it down to you if you're not an educator. If you are an educator, identity before performance, right? Identity before instruction is my trademark. I'm Ronnette Branham, and this is Educators with Oil.
Subscribe to Educators with Oil podcast on your preferred platform and join Ronnette on this mission to empower teachers through the wisdom of the Bible. Because when biblical strategies meet the classroom, extraordinary teaching happens.
Educators, let's shine a light on our classrooms. See you on Educators with Oil podcast, where teaching and faith unite.